When I refused to cook for Jessica's VIP guests on Christmas Eve, I didn't realize it would shatter everything or finally set me free. That night, as the house filled with the clatter of crashed dishes and whispered gossip, I boarded a plane to Florida, carrying more than just a suitcase. I was carrying 15 years of silent servitude and the weight of being invisible in my own family. For 15 years, my life at the Bennett household had been a carefully choreographed performance, but I was no star. I was the stagehand, the unpaid servant, the invisible shadow in the background. My parents, Beverly and Robert Hayes, had a reputation for elegance and success in our affluent town. Yet behind the gilded doors, their love was a currency measured in favors and obedience. And I was their unpaid maid. Jessica, my younger sister, was their pride and joy. The golden child. The one who never seemed to make mistakes. The one whose every word carried weight and whose every whim was met without hesitation. I still remember the sound of the silverware clinking sharply against china plates as Beverly barked orders, her voice sharp and brittle with impatience. Ella, make sure everything is perfect for Jessica's guests tonight. 25 of them, including Amanda Rossi from Summit Hospitality. This is important. I nodded silently, the words weighing heavy on my chest. I was expected to spend the entire evening in the kitchen, invisible, while the rest of the family basked in the glow of their high society world. Our kitchen was a grand space, gleaming with polished marble countertops and shining stainless steel appliances. The smell of fresh herbs and roasting meats filled the air as I moved methodically, my hands steady despite the turmoil inside. But inside, I was simmering with quiet rebellion, because what no one knew, not my parents, not Jessica, not even the guests, was that I wasn't just the family servant. I was also the CEO of Apex Events, a thriving catering company with millions in annual revenue. I built that company from the ground up. I negotiated contracts, managed staff, and signed deals with clients who trusted my vision. But I never told anyone at home. That Christmas Eve, as I chopped vegetables and arranged platters, Beverly's voice sliced through the kitchen again. "You'll be here all night, Ella. Don't disappoint us." I didn't answer. I was done being their invisible shadow. Later that evening, as the sounds of the party drifted from the dining room, I quietly packed a bag. Instead of donning an apron, I put on my jacket and headed to the airport. I was flying to Florida to meet Amanda Rossi, the very same CEO who was supposedly attending Jessica's dinner. I was about to sign a $2 million contract that would propel Apex Events to new heights. As the plane soared above the clouds, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. Freedom from the weight of expectations. Freedom from being the family's afterthought. Freedom to be myself. Meanwhile, back at the Bennett estate, chaos was unfolding. Without me, the kitchen staff was unprepared for the demanding crowd. The food arrived late, the presentation was sloppy, and Amanda Rossi, who was supposed to be the star guest, looked less than impressed. Whispers spread through the room, and Beverly's forced smile faltered. The next day, the truth hit like a storm. Amanda Rossi had recognized me from a family photo in a local magazine, a rare, candid snapshot of me at a charity event. During a post-dinner speech, she publicly announced our partnership and praised the success of Apex Events, a business she trusted implicitly. The guests were stunned. The Bennett family's carefully crafted facade crumbled in real time. That moment marked the beginning of the end for the life I had known and the toxic family dynamic I had endured. But it was also the beginning of my true story, one of courage, independence, and reclaiming my worth. The morning after the disastrous dinner, the house felt heavier, as if the walls themselves were swallowing the tension that hung thick in the air. I sat by the window in my small apartment, the faint smell of brewing coffee mingling with the crisp winter chill seeping through the glass. Outside, the city stirred awake, but inside me, a storm was still raging. I hadn't meant to expose my family's cruelty so publicly, but sometimes, the truth slips out in the most unexpected ways. For years, my parents had treated me like I was invisible, less a daughter and more a personal assistant tasked with running their household. Beverly's voice was the sharpest instrument in that orchestra of control, and Robert's silent disapproval cut just as deep. Jessica, my younger sister, was their shining star, their golden child. She floated through life, wrapped in praise, her every accomplishment met with applause and admiration. Meanwhile, I was expected to cook, clean, and make myself as small as possible, all while keeping my own ambitions hidden in the shadows. I remembered countless evenings like this one, the clatter of plates in the dining room, the polite laughter masking judgment, and my own quiet sigh as I scrubbed the kitchen floor long after the guests had gone. "Ella," Beverly would say sharply, "don't forget the canapes for Jessica's next event. You're responsible for everything tonight." Her words were orders disguised as reminders, laced with an expectation that I would drop everything and comply. It was exhausting, but I'd learned to obey without complaint. But beneath that surface, I was building something of my own, a business I'd nurtured through late nights and early mornings. Apex Events was more than a company. It was my lifeline. The smell of fresh linens, the clinking of glasses at a perfect event, the excited buzz of a successful launch, it was my world. No one at home knew that the quiet girl in the kitchen was also the CEO of a multi-million-dollar catering business. That Christmas Eve, as the pressure mounted, something inside me shifted. I was done being the background character in my own life. When Beverly's voice cut through the kitchen for the final time, demanding I cook for 25 of Jessica's VIP guests, including Amanda Rossi, the CEO of Summit Hospitality, I made a decision. I wouldn't be there. Instead, I was on a plane, flying to Florida to meet Amanda, and finalize a deal that would change everything for Apex Events. The contrast couldn't have been starker. On one side, a family that saw me as a servant. On the other, a future I had crafted with my own hands. Landing in Florida, the warm air felt like a promise. Amanda greeted me with a firm handshake and a knowing smile. "You've done incredible work, Ella," she said. "I'm excited about this partnership." We signed the contract, the ink drying on a $2 million deal that would take Apex Events to the next level. Meanwhile, back at the Bennett estate, the fallout from my absence was undeniable. Jessica's carefully curated evening unraveled without the one person who truly kept the gears turning. Guests whispered. Food arrived late, and the grand event was overshadowed by disorganization. Beverly's forced smiles cracked, and Robert's silence grew heavier. Then came the moment of reckoning. Amanda Rossi recognized me from a photo in a local magazine, a rare image of me at a charity gala, and made the announcement of our partnership during the dinner. The room fell silent. My family's carefully guarded secrets were exposed to their closest friends and associates. I sat alone in my hotel room that night, the glow of my phone screen reflecting the headlines of the Forbes cover story profiling my success. For the first time, my story was out in the open. Not as the servant daughter, not as the invisible sister, but as a woman who had fought for herself and won. In the days following the Forbes story, my phone buzzed nonstop. Messages poured in from old friends, distant relatives, even strangers who had read about my journey. Some offered congratulations. Others shared their own stories of feeling overlooked or undervalued by their families. It was overwhelming, but also oddly comforting. At home, though, things were far from comforting. My parents didn't call. They didn't text. They barely acknowledged the storm their household had become. Jessica was furious. The golden child's carefully crafted image had been cracked, and she wasn't sure how to fix it. One evening, I decided to visit. I wanted to confront them, to demand answers, or maybe just to hear an apology I wasn't sure I deserved. When I stepped into the grand foyer, the scent of polished wood and floral arrangements hit me like a reminder of everything I had escaped. Beverly greeted me with a stiff smile, eyes cold and calculating. "Well, Ella, so good of you to grace us with your presence," she said, voice dripping with sarcasm. Robert didn't say a word. His silence was louder than any condemnation. I looked at Jessica, who avoided my gaze. "What did you expect?" Beverly snapped when I asked why they never believed in me. "You're not like your sister." Those words hit harder than any slap, but I didn't back down. "I'm not your servant," I said quietly but firmly. "And I'm not the invisible daughter anymore." That night, I left feeling a mix of sadness and relief. Sadness for the family that could have been. Relief for the woman I was becoming. The days that followed my confrontation were filled with a cold war of silence. My parents avoided my calls and messages. Jessica's bitterness was palpable whenever we crossed paths, her eyes darting away like I was a stranger in the house where I'd grown up. But beneath the quiet tension, I was gathering strength. One afternoon, as I sat in my office surrounded by event plans and contracts, my phone buzzed. A message from my mother. "We need to talk." My heart pounded. Was this the apology I'd longed for? The start of a real conversation? When I arrived at their home, the atmosphere was tense but civil. Beverly and Robert sat stiffly on the couch, their faces a mask of carefully controlled emotion. "We've made mistakes," Beverly began, voice softer than I remembered. Robert nodded. "We underestimated you, Ella. And for that, we're sorry." I listened, wary but hopeful. I told them about the years of feeling invisible, the constant comparisons to Jessica, the weight of being the family servant. They didn't interrupt, and when I finished, Beverly's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "We want to rebuild," she said quietly. "But it has to be on your terms." I nodded slowly, understanding that forgiveness wasn't a switch to be flipped, but a path we'd have to walk carefully. That day marked the beginning of healing a new chapter, where I wasn't defined by my family's expectations, but by my own strength. Rebuilding the fractured relationship with my family wasn't a straightforward journey. Boundaries had to be drawn carefully, lines that said I would no longer be taken for granted or dismissed. I began inviting Beverly and Robert to Apex Events' smaller gatherings, letting them see the woman I'd become beyond their narrow perceptions. At first, they were hesitant, awkward in my world of bustling kitchens, perfectly arranged tables, and clients who valued my expertise. One afternoon, as we prepared for a corporate launch, Beverly watched quietly. I caught her eyes lingering on the meticulous details, the polished silverware, the vibrant floral arrangements, the satisfied smiles of clients. "It's impressive," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Robert stayed silent but nodded in approval. It was a small victory, but a meaningful one. Meanwhile, Jessica remained distant, her jealousy a palpable barrier. But I no longer let it hurt me. I was done competing for their approval. At the heart of this healing was the lesson I learned long ago that love from family is important, but it cannot come at the expense of self-worth. The story of my rise and my family's downfall didn't stay quiet for long. Local media caught wind of the Forbes article and began asking questions. Friends and acquaintances who once viewed my family as perfect were now whispering about the cold, controlling environment behind closed doors. At the annual charity gala, I watched from the sidelines as the Bennett name was met with cautious glances and muted conversations. The fallout was real, but it was also a relief. My parents faced social consequences that were hard to ignore. Invitations to exclusive events dwindled. Old friends distanced themselves. Beverly's social calendar, once packed with glittering affairs, became noticeably sparse. Yet through it all, I remained dignified. I didn't gloat or seek revenge. I simply stood in my truth. When Beverly reached out, begging for a chance to rebuild our relationship, I listened, but on my own terms. I wasn't the girl who would silently serve anymore. I was a woman who had learned to set boundaries and demand respect. The power of owning my story was undeniable. It wasn't just about success or money, it was about reclaiming my identity and my dignity. Building a new life on my own terms wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I found peace in the simple things. The quiet hum of my office on a slow morning, the smell of fresh coffee brewing, the genuine smiles of my team celebrating a job well done. I learned to forgive, not to forget or excuse the past, but to free myself from its hold. Forgiving my parents didn't mean I accepted their behavior. It meant I chose my own peace over bitterness. Slowly, the walls I had built around my heart began to soften. I started to allow new beginnings, not just with my family, but with myself. Every event Apex Events hosted was a testament to my resilience, proof that I was more than their expectations, more than the invisible daughter. And as I stood on stages, signed contracts, and heard the applause, I knew this was only the beginning. Thank you for walking this journey with me. Sharing my story hasn't been easy, but I hope it shines a light on a truth many of us face: the struggle of being unseen by the ones who should see us most. Family can be a source of deep love, but sometimes it's also where we encounter our greatest pain. When those we expect to support us instead diminish our worth, it's okay to step away and reclaim our voice. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Or carried the weight of others' expectations so heavily you forgot who you really were? If you have, I want you to know this: your story matters. Your voice matters. And setting boundaries is not only an act of self-respect, but an act of courage. Would you have found the strength to walk away like I did? Or would you have stayed, hoping for change? I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. If my story touched you, please consider subscribing for more real, heartfelt stories about family, struggle, and healing. Remember, healing starts with truth, and strength grows in the soil of self-love.